At exactly 3:14 a.m. local time, the air defense radar at the Ryazan oil refinery detected something it could not explain. A faint signal flickered across the operator's screen. He paused, then dismissed it. Probably a flock of birds, maybe a heat distortion from the refinery towers. The Ryazan facility lies nearly 180 kilometers southeast of Moscow, deep inside what Russian command considered a fully secure zone. The assumption was simple. For anything hostile to reach this location, it would have to cross more than 500 kilometers of some of the most heavily defended airspace on Earth. It would need to evade S-400 missile batteries guarding the borders, slip through dense electronic warfare layers surrounding Moscow, and bypass close-range defense systems protecting strategic energy infrastructure. On paper, it was impossible, but the math failed. That flicker wasn't a bird. It was a long-range attack drone. Cheap, lightweight, built from aluminum, powered by a modest 50-horsepower Rotax engine. It cruised at 150 kilometers per hour, flying just 30 meters above the tree line. Below the radar horizon, the S-400 systems never saw it. The electronic jamming didn't matter. This drone didn't rely on GPS in its final moments. It used deep learning optical navigation, matching live visuals with stored satellite imagery of the refinery's distillation towers. By the time the operator realized the truth, he was 4 seconds too late. Oil refineries are unforgiving systems. They function like a single pressurized organism, processing crude oil into diesel, gasoline, and jet fuel. At the core of this system is the primary distillation unit, a 50-meter steel column where crude is heated to nearly 370 degrees Celsius. Take that column offline, and the entire refinery stops. There's no bypass, no alternative route. It is the bottleneck. Ukrainian planners understood this perfectly. They didn't target fuel tanks, the dramatic explosions seen on camera, those can be replaced. They targeted the heart. At 3:14 and 12 seconds, the drone struck the upper third of the AVT-6 distillation column. The 50-kilogram warhead didn't just impact, it penetrated. A shaped charge punched through insulation and detonated inside the vapor chamber. The result wasn't just an explosion, it was a catastrophic internal failure. The column ruptured. Hundreds of tons of superheated hydrocarbons depressurized instantly. A massive fireball erupted, ripping through the plant's internal systems. Inside the control room, pressure readings dropped to 0. Outside, the sky turned orange. Ryazan, Russia's third-largest refinery, was effectively destroyed. But this wasn't an isolated strike. It was the opening move. Throughout the summer and autumn of 2025, Ukrainian forces launched a coordinated campaign to dismantle Russia's fuel network using weapons cheaper than a family sedan. The strategy was brutally simple. A refinery costs billions and takes years to repair, especially under sanctions. The drone that destroys it? Around $35,000. This is modern asymmetrical warfare. Russia was firing million-dollar interceptors at drones worth a fraction of that cost. And when they missed, they lost infrastructure worth hundreds of millions. Soon, more ghosts appeared on radar screens. At Novokuibyshevsk, nearly 900 kilometers from Ukraine, the same pattern repeated. Operators believed they were out of range. They trusted distance. But Ukrainian drones had evolved, now capable of flying over 1,000 kilometers. No location was safe anymore. This exposed a critical weakness in Russia's air defense. Systems like the Pantsir S-1 protect specific points, creating defensive bubbles roughly 20 kilometers wide. But Russia doesn't have one refinery. It has dozens. Hundreds of depots, thousands of kilometers of pipelines. There simply aren't enough systems to cover everything. To protect refineries, Russia would have to pull defenses away from the front lines, leaving tanks, artillery, and bases exposed, a no-win scenario. On one late summer morning, the decision was forced. 2 drones approached Novokuibyshevsk using the Volga River as a navigation guide, masking their radar signature. The air defense commander hesitated. Were they friendly? Civilian? Threats? That hesitation cost everything. The first drone hit the catalytic cracker, responsible for high-octane fuel production. The second struck the control center. The refinery went blind. The impact was immediate. This facility wasn't just fueling cars. It supplied diesel to Russian military logistics. A single tank division can burn 250,000 liters of fuel per day. Without fuel, a T-90 tank becomes nothing more than 50 tons of metal. By targeting refineries, Ukraine wasn't attacking tanks directly. They were starving them. Russia still had crude oil, but crude oil doesn't power engines. It must be refined. With key refineries offline, Russia was forced to import fuel from Belarus and Kazakhstan, a humiliating shift for an energy superpower. Official statements downplayed the damage, but satellite imagery told the truth. The thermal glow of active towers had vanished. The facilities were cold, dead. Then came Volgograd. If Ryazan was a warning, and Novokuibyshevsk was a strike, Volgograd was psychological warfare. This refinery was critical, supplying the southern front and operations in Crimea. Russia fortified it heavily. Electronic jammers, anti-aircraft guns on rooftops, layered defenses. They believed they were ready. They weren't. The drones didn't approach directly. They followed complex zigzag routes, threading through gaps in radar coverage identified by Western intelligence. They flew at just 15 meters altitude, below detection. The gun crews heard them before they saw them, but by then it was too late. The target, the vacuum distillation unit, a massive, highly specialized structure. When the warhead struck, it didn't just ignite a fire. It compromised the entire structure. The tower collapsed, dragging pipes, pumps, and systems down with it. One of southern Russia's key fuel hubs was gone. The effects hit immediately. Frontline units reported fuel shortages. Convoys sat idle. Logistics stalled. The war machine began to choke. The cost to Ukraine? Minimal. A few drones. Basic fuel. Skilled engineers. The payoff? Strategic paralysis. Panic spread across Russia's energy sector. Improvised defenses appeared. Metal cages around towers. Mobile machine gun teams. But the scale was impossible. Russia spans 11 time zones. Its infrastructure stretches across continents. You cannot defend everything. Ukraine exploited that reality. Every air defense system moved to protect infrastructure, left gaps elsewhere. It became a losing trade. Every time. As autumn arrived, the campaign escalated. Cooler air improved drone performance. Engineers introduced thermobaric warheads. These weapons didn't just explode, they created pressure waves that crushed internal systems. Inside refineries, the effect was devastating. Steel bent like soft clay. Repairs would take years. Fuel prices surged. Exports were banned. Domestic shortages grew. For ordinary Russians, the war finally became visible. Not through explosions, but empty fuel stations. And then came the real breakthrough. Navigation. These drones no longer relied on GPS. They used terrain contour matching, scanning the ground below and comparing it to stored maps. Jamming systems became useless. The drones weren't listening. They were seeing. At Tuapse refinery on the Black Sea, the system proved unstoppable. The first drone struck a vacuum unit, but the second wave was more strategic. It hit the pumping station, ensuring the refinery couldn't restart. Repairs required specialized equipment, now blocked by sanctions. Downtime stretched from weeks to months. By late September, gasoline production dropped 14%. That erased export capacity. Revenue vanished. Repairs stalled. The system entered collapse. By October, agriculture was hit. Harvest equipment ran out of diesel. Farmers waited weeks for fuel. Prices skyrocketed. Inflation surged. The central bank raised interest rates to 21%. Economic growth froze. Sanctions hadn't done this. Drones did. Russia responded with desperation. More air defenses, elevated systems, mobile units. But the math didn't change. Too many targets, too few defenses. Then came the final evolution. Fiber-optic guided drones. No radio signals, no jamming possible, a physical connection to the operator, perfect control. At Saratov refinery, the result was undeniable. The drone bypassed all defenses, struck control valves with surgical precision. Shutdown extended into winter, and winter changes everything. Oil thickens, pipes freeze, systems rupture. A shutdown in freezing temperatures isn't temporary. It's catastrophic. Ukraine timed it perfectly. The strikes didn't just destroy infrastructure. They let the cold finish the job. This wasn't just a drone campaign. It was a complete rewrite of modern warfare economics. Cheap machines breaking billion-dollar systems and turning geography itself into a weapon.